And I'm very pleased to be moderating this panel today with a series of great thinkers from our industry who span everything from kind of the application level of technology and data down to the infrastructure that kind of all of us in the industry, all the different technology providers depend upon. So I think it's an interesting spectrum of speakers that we have today in our sessions. We have Roger Pilz, Chief Innovation Officer from Pitney Bowes, Bob Shukai, Head of Advanced Product Innovation from Thomson Reuters, Stephen Hagan, who is Senior Vice President of Server Technologies at Oracle. And we have Greg Turetsky, who's Principal Engineer for Strategic Business Development, focused on GNSS and location strategy at Intel. For any of you who are familiar with the technology stack that defines our industry today and going off into the future, I think you'll agree that this is a really nice spectrum that we have. So, technology innovation and convergence in this industry is nothing new, but I think as we all know, geospatial, what some people like to call the geospatial revolution, has somehow infused everything in daily life, every aspect of every industry. It's been commoditized down to the chip level, embedded in all of our devices. It's something that all of our children simply assume when they thieve our device away from us to play their favorite app. That they'll turn location on and that will somehow enhance their user experience. You know, when I kind of came through the geospatial technology business and the geography discipline, I always got annoyed by those maps that were really, really beautiful and they were precise and they were accurate, except for layers were from like 10 years ago. And you know, there wasn't the same rigor with time as there was with space. Now it seems somewhat unavoidable. You know, our chips are spitting out location and orientation and all this, you know, down to the nanosecond. And our business analytics are about, you know, data quality and data hygiene down to the mailing cycle, right? So I would really love to hear how you guys think about time scales, accuracies of time, and how that impacts your business, because everything that ever happens on Earth doesn't just happen in space, it happens in time. So let's start off with that.
I'm happy to
go ahead.
Yeah, it's been a critical part of taking what was historically GIS for certain use cases and applying that competency to the world of today. And unquestionably, you hit on a key issue. It's had a couple implications for us as we've evolved from classic GIS use cases to customers like Facebook and Twitter wanting to understand the location context of someone so they could make an offer. It required us to evolve what we did. So we had to evolve the form factor in which our technology was consumed, from your kind of classic heavy on-prem, updated every quarter, to cloud-based behind APIs, real-time information for those use cases. Data is unquestionably an underlying piece of the puzzle. So data that was like a quarter old was no good anymore. So it's actually caused us to re-engineer our data supply chain. So in creating those solutions, we have proprietary data, and then we're sourcing data from a variety of providers. We're ingesting it, conflating it, and creating a solution. Just like in manufacturing, when Toyota kind of pushed the industry into just-in-time manufacturing and sort of evolved the whole chain from push to pull, we're finding the need for real-time data to not just change the form factor of how our applications are consumed, but it's caused us to have to re-engineer the whole supply chain of data, from our suppliers to how we manage it to how we make it available. So it's been a key aspect of that evolution.
Great. Bob?
Yeah, and imagine in our world in financial services where it's all down to the nanosecond. You know, every single financial transaction we actually have to hold is real-time ticks. So imagine building up this massive, massive database of every single trade that's ever enacted in the financial services space, and then overlaying, as you saw, shipping stuff, security threats, how that's going to impact, and sort of the beauty, I guess, of the data sets that we have as a corporation is that, you know, take a stock like Apple. Everybody understands Apple really, really well, and of course we're looking at every single stock tick that moves that one way or another. But there's all these little random things that pop in and out at any given time, right? Apple gets sued by Ericsson. Oh, that's a legal issue. Boom, that drives that stock price one way or another. Oh, Apple files some interesting intellectual property that suddenly gets revealed, and that helps you determine where Apple may be going as a corporation, who may be a buy target for Apple. And so that's where, you know, I think we absolutely as a corporation rely on not just the real-time stuff, but the things that impact that real-time movement of information and what it does to markets, what it does to companies, what it does to being able to service our clients and customers.
All the best stories have been taken. And we much appreciate it. And so basically, from our point of view, is providing the platform can do this. This is why you saw me talking about vertical scaling, horizontal scaling, is basically given the amount of data Thomson Reuters is trying to process, you know, and we, you know, they use our semantic graph capabilities, is that we can provide the scale so they can, you know, you can get that quick of a response. Basically, we try to provide the software substrate, and I'm going to hand it to the man that's providing the hardware substrate.
I'll take it all the way to the other end, right? I'm actually a trained physicist from a long time ago. So to me, time is the same as distance, right? So that's the other problem that I have is a nanosecond is a foot at the speed of light. So if you want to know where you are within a certain accuracy, then you also have to know what time it is where you are within a certain accuracy. So people used to get upset about their phones being off by a minute or, you know, or whatever, and now we're talking about trying to maintain timing accuracies down to nanosecond levels in mobile devices, which is really quite a challenge, right? In order to do that, and the other thing, even from what you're saying, from, you know, if you equate time and distance, I remember visiting Hofstra University in Long Island, who has the largest trading desk outside of NASDAQ, for the simple reason that they have the closest trading desk outside of NASDAQ, so they have the smallest time difference to the exchange. So it comes kind of in both ways.
So I actually love having 4 business guys up here so I can ask your thoughts on public policy. So I don't know if I'll get your personal thoughts or your corporate thoughts or a blend or those from your father-in-law. Frankly, I don't really care. But you know, as it relates to innovation in this space, what do you see is the role of government in investment in technology, investment in R&D, shaping policy as it relates to, I don't know, everything from GPS to data sharing?
But I think there's 2 really important things that government has a role to play. In my business, one of them is around safety and security, right? So this whole idea of that I'm very involved with in 911 is really important, right? We've moved, the entire industry has moved from fixed landline phones where when you picked up your phone at home and you dialed 911, all we did was go look up in a database, that phone number has an address, done, finished, right? Simplest imaginable way to dispatch. But now, you know, 40% of homes don't have a landline, right? 80% of all 911 calls come from mobile phones. So we have to be able to provide that kind of methodology. So I think the government has a role to play in safety and security. But you know, and then that's kind of the main area that I have the most kind of expertise in, where I see some capability. On the other side is there's the privacy issue, right? This whole idea of how do we maintain individual privacy for our own individual rights, but at some level be able to provide that location data that has so much more ability to help everybody else.
So why not? We'll go personal. Because I don't think Thomson Reuters would kill it. Yeah, it's not, no. So
The senator from the great state of...
Senator from, yeah. So the interesting thing about this is that when Chris introduced me, one of the roles that I play is this ambassador for Tech City, which is London's startup community. And I had the ability, and I still have the ability, to work with the British government on a regular basis as they look to grow their innovation strategy. And the thing that I found that the British government did exceptionally well is that they listened to business. You know, the questions they're saying is, you know, what is it going to take for Britain to compete on a global stage in innovation? And I said it's sort of threefold. One is that government has to do what government does best, which is create the right tax policies, the right immigration policies, the right sorts of infrastructure to basically let people do what they need to do. London had a great startup community. And I said the last thing you need to do is meddle, but you need to provide tax incentives and the right sorts of things so that people will want to invest and you'll create a climate of innovation. And then I said the third thing was education, and kind of got this look. And I said, you know, you need to be able to have kids that wake up wherever they happen to be in some of the most, you know, economically disadvantaged areas of London and look out and aspire to be the next Sir Tim Berners-Lee or the next Sheryl Sandberg or Tim Cook, or whoever you want to pick as your model. And within 3 years, David Cameron's government listened to us and completely revamped the IT curriculum, threw out the old let's learn PowerPoint, and instead brought in a curriculum that said we're going to teach computer science to our kids beginning at the age of 4 and 5. So that when kids are 11 years old in the UK, they'll know how to program in 2 languages. And so, you know, I think one of the things that you know, government has to do much better job of is create that right sort of education policy. Similarly, at the other end, when people are graduating from university, staple that indefinite leave to remain. In our country, staple a freaking green card, for God's sake, to these people graduating with doctorates that want to stay in this country so that they don't leave, so that we don't have that technology brain drain. Because the problem isn't creating the next Yo or some useless application out in Silicon Valley. It's solving these big issues that I think we need to do going forward, and you don't get that when you're kicking your best and brightest out of the country.
So I'll second that and everything you said, because I know we've published in the Wall Street Journal articles on this. You know, again, if you've just graduated from MIT with a PhD in computer science and we say, oh, I'm sorry, you can't stay because our 65,000 person quota has just already been passed, which gets passed in 48 hours, there is something really, really wrong with us. We should be proud of, as a country, this particular country, we should be proud of the fact that people come from other countries to go to our universities. This is wonderful. That means we're doing a great job at that level. But they should also be allowed to stay. And then that feeds into the R&D community, which then provides more value to the world at large, because we try to keep an open thing. In this country, it's easier to do some innovations. There's lesser restrictions than others. And the second part, again, this is this country, but some other countries have the same issue, and this is well published. Profits that are made from America, that are made in other countries, should be brought home at most a tax of 1 to 2%. It's 35% right now, minus whatever you paid. So ask yourself, why is a software company investing in real estate in Czechoslovakia? Because that's cheaper than bringing the money, because we can't bring it home. This is well known in our Congress. The Congress fights it. It's the 2 parties fighting with each other. So basically that's a government change. So one, and again, the other, I'll back to the first part, and then there is, unfortunately, the national security defense industry that we all have to suffer with because of some terrorists. And this is why, when I talked about the trillion triple graph, the government's investing in, at that level, type of technology, very high-end technology, and scaling it out to try to make not just Americans safe, but everybody around the world safe, to know where's the problem, people, and what can we do about this. So basically, although I prefer the education side, and let's improve R&D so we can do more, we also have to worry about tracking the bad people.
Yeah, and I guess from a Pitney Bowes standpoint, again, personal comments, but maybe touching on 2 things that we have maybe a different experience with or are unique to us. The first is related to e-commerce, and I don't know if folks caught that Alibaba in China acquired the leading GIS mapping software company AutoNavi. He's very curious, and there's clearly a convergence between e-commerce and location intelligence and geospatial. And Jack Ma said, you know, in a mobile world, those two things are now together. To us, e-commerce is a very, very important part of the business. Jack Ma will say it's going to be the governing aspect of how trade happens. It's evolving from the classic WTO world to more of an e-commerce world. And you know, from our perspective, we were involved with $2 billion of exports annually in terms of our e-commerce business, but policies that help cross-border commerce and exports, to me at least, would be a very important part of government policy that I think would be helpful. I have to say, you know, just brand new to the company in some respects, it's been amazing to see the level of innovation happening there. And they have a big data initiative called Informed Visibility. So to the degree we see government agencies who really constructively work with industry partners in terms of sort of an IoT type approach to transforming the operations of the industry, both in terms of what data should we provide, what data are they providing, do they provide modern APIs for us to consume, to provide better services to end customers. Those are additional ways that we're finding government can be helpful.
Great. So everybody's mentioned mobile because that's just part of our daily life. One of our delegates here today wants to see if you can talk beyond mobile, Google Glass, ocular VR, other ways that we'll be experiencing. Doesn't mean that it won't be out and about where our compute is tied to our movement versus our desk. But how do you see going beyond mobile and how that's going to influence your business and the sector at large?
So I was lucky to be one of the first glass explorers, which was a very, very cool thing. I love the technology. I think where Google made the mistake on it was trying to bring it as a mainstream product instead of taking it straight to enterprise at the outset, which is where it had much more applicability, much more usability. One of the products that we actually built off glass was something for law enforcement that we demonstrated last year at the International Chief of Police Conference in Orlando, Florida. And essentially that gave officers the ability to wear glass, to be able to look at a driver's license, officers that were walking the beat to look at identity, to get information back, to have threat information put within their field of vision. Because of course the last thing you want to do is have an officer staring down at a device instead of keeping things up in field of vision. I absolutely think that there's going to be some phenomenal things built off VR and AR. And I certainly think, you know, especially for law enforcement, especially for people that are working, for example, in maintenance, things like that, if you're working on an aircraft engine, for example, what a terrific way to be able to actually go in and repair that aircraft engine with things in your field of vision. And that's where I think there's some tremendous opportunity.
So I would say from a technology standpoint that boundary is really thin. I don't even know that there is a boundary in the sense that all those devices still need all the same fundamental capabilities in terms of computing, memory, connectivity, right? The user interface is different, but that's really a human factors issue, right? It's really not a technology issue. The way we interact with devices, the way we interact with different things is really dependent on somewhat of our job function and also somewhat of the data and the information we're trying to get out of it.
Good. I guess from our standpoint, what comes to mind with that question, moving beyond mobile phones and how is LI playing in the Internet of everything, what's happening with connected cars has certainly been interesting to watch. The German auto manufacturers buying Nokia here. It's kind of fascinating. We, as I mentioned earlier, have been tightly partnered with a company called Inrix, which is all about the connected car and using that as an IoT source of information that drives.
So I'm actually a symposium chair of the American Geographical Society's fall symposium called Geography 2050, and our theme this year is on exploring the future of an urbanized world. You're 9 billion people, and a vast majority of them by 2050 will actually be in urban areas. And I've got a ton of questions here that relate to you know, well, in urban areas, indoor accuracy probably matters more than outdoor accuracy. I've got questions around political equity, around land management in urban areas with 9 billion people. I've got questions about how the Internet of Things will play. And so maybe I'll just give you an open-ended urban question and see where you think you're going to play in all that, and go from there. So why don't we start with indoor accuracy? And I have somebody who actually wants to know what the vertical accuracy is indoors. If you want to get nerdy, yeah. That's a pretty nerdy location question.
Okay, so real quick, I think the typical location systems that we use outdoors, right, radio location systems don't work well indoors just because of propagation, right? We all have issues with our cell phones that don't always connect, even though we think they're going to connect all the time. And what's the result of that is people are deploying specialized infrastructure indoors, right, with phone companies doing microcells or whatever it is. And so the same thing now is coming with Wi-Fi, right? I know it's a lot more prevalent here in the US than in other places, but that's an indoor infrastructure that we can leverage for those kind of things. And actually, if I wind back to the one thing, it turns out vertical accuracy is hugely important, right? If somebody dials 911 from a cell phone and I get the location of the front door, that's really nice. But if I don't know what floor of this hotel it's on, it's really hard. And in a hotel, even in a hotel like this, it's especially hard because that vertical accuracy is actually not, it's semantic. Right. It could be the lobby floor or the mezzanine floor. That doesn't necessarily directly translate without somebody's big giant database of knowing exactly what the height of elevation of this floor is versus that one, right? Hotels don't have a 13th floor, or in Asia they don't have a 4th floor, so it's very hard to translate the actual lat long out into a semantic location that a firefighter can use, right? And if you want to talk about a Google Glass application or something like that, that's exactly what you want, right? It needs to be a semantic location. That user interface has to get translated, and databases are the right way to do it. So I think there's a huge application for that in urban areas. So I mean, that's part of what we're looking at, is that indoor location technology has a very different way of being presented to the user indoors than a map. Indoor maps are really hard, and you imagine a place like this with walls that move every day, right? They're going to reconfigure these things, and there's different conferences in here every day. It's a very different way of presenting mapping information to users. But that's one business we're not in, and you guys are.
There you go.
Yeah, and mine, I'm just going, this is the smart city, and then again, we're in the substrate level, or the platform level. Yeah, we have a lot of people adopting us in smart cities for the very reason that, yeah, what's needed is the integrated data store and data access, so that basically whether you're dealing both from the spatial level, the management of the road, where's the power lines, where's the whatever, particularly if something went wrong there, as well as notifying citizenry, there's an emergency over here, or there's a road construction here, or matters of health, where's the nearest of these. But basically having all of this in a shared database, which is going to be of an enormous size, of course, depending on some of the cities are measured, unfortunately, now in many millions. If you've been to China, they've got something like 30 cities over 10 million. I'm always staggered when I go there, and people in New York think that they're big. I said, yeah. But basically, how can you manage all of these resources together, but keep it shared so it's accessible both to all of the people who keep the city running, but to the citizenry, so the citizenry can get this from a device like this immediately as needed. So yeah, that's part of we're working on. That's why I talked about the many different data models, because there's many different problems you're trying to solve, and yet you've got to make this all available in real time.
So we're really lucky at Thomson Reuters because we get to build really cool applications and content solutions. And as Chris alluded to, land registry, we believe, is core to this. It's core to people feeling like they have something tangible that they can attach their name, their ability to maintain that land, to be able to do something. And that doesn't matter if it's on the ground here or a vertical farm 32 floors up above. it's all still very, very relevant, and it's relevant not just to the person, but to the tax authorities, to the contributions that people are going to make. We've got this project that we're running, and again, we all take it as a very, very normal thing that we all have bank cards and credit cards and things like that, but so much of the world's population is still unbanked, hasn't been reached, where we're having to break the mold and think about ways that we're going to reach the farmers out there with microloans to go and develop their land, how we're going to go and reach people that don't have access to education or health care. And it's going to take completely different things, which to me is fascinating because, again, forget 1313 Mockingbird Lane. They create a set of 3-meter by 3-meter grid of the entire planet mapped into multiple languages so that when you ask, what's your address, where do you live, it's 3 words in your local language. It's not 51.039 north. That means absolutely nothing to somebody living in that space in the world. So I think, it's incumbent on all of us not just to think we're going to come at it with the solutions that we have at this Western approach to problems, but to look at how we're going to solve the problems on the ground given the technologies and the things people actually have access to in the real world today, given that, education is not nearly as prominent, addresses are not nearly as prominent, land registry is not really as prominent, and those are the kinds of problems that have to be solved.
Yeah. And for us, we've watched and experienced the buzz around smarter cities, and there's lots of talk about different applications, like for tourists, et cetera. And like the rest of your business people in the room, key question is where are cities spending money around smarter cities? Where we've seen them spending a significant amount of money, and where we've seen a lot of growth is around the asset management use cases and applications, and the application of location intelligence towards asset management. So one of our areas that's been growing a lot, especially in Europe and UK, is the use of location intelligence and geospatial analytics to help cities as large as Birmingham in the UK, or even smaller cities in Europe, Stanford actually in Connecticut, where we're headquartered, is the use of location intelligence, often via mobile form factor, to get information about assets and assets that need fixing, and to help town workers actually operate in terms of fixing roads or lights or bridges, et cetera. So of all the smarter cities sort of urban hype tests, we've seen asset management and LI for asset management really where the money is so far.
How does this relate to human health and health care? I mean, you certainly had a discussion about feeding the world, and lacking food is probably not the best path towards health. But do any of you just have a perspective on the role of all this for human well-being, health care, and human health, or maybe things that your corporations are doing?
Yeah, so again, this is where, again, we hate to go back to the mobile technology stuff, but mobile is the one thing that has really permeated across the planet. It's everywhere you go. And when you look at the things that are out there today, some of the amazing projects that are taking place to provide text-based services, very, very simple information services to people that are remote, we can tackle a lot of these problems. Even down to, using technologies to understand where the threats are coming from with problems around disease and how disease originates and comes out. And of course, everybody points to the infamous Google flu thing that was a little bit off, I believe, at the end of the day. But again, this is a huge problem, because when you think about that high degree of urbanization and the likelihood that you can have massive epidemics spread just like that, I think mobile phone technology is going to be absolutely critical in helping us understand when those problems exist immediately and being able to come in and deal with it as fast as humanly possible, as opposed to letting it spread around the planet.
Everybody's health care in that database, everything that is, when you were born, what diseases you've had, what any kind of immunizations of your entire life and your DNA. And so what's the use case for that? Okay, sadly, a relative of yours comes down with leukemia. there's probably 5 primary treatments for leukemia. If we know your DNA, we can say, okay, based on that, you want treatment 3. That will be most effective because we've got the history, of basically 1 billion people, and so it's gone. Here's all the treatments that have been done because we have this massive database, and we've got, this graph of DNA, and we're mapping it to there. Then you could improve healthcare for everyone. That's better quality of outcome and lower cost. So you're trying to give somebody, let's try to treat it this way, but it's the wrong way based on their DNA. Then basically you just increase the cost and you may have put them at greater risk. That's the potential. And I know at least one country tried, and then they were on their way to building this, because I was involved in the project, and it got shot down by privacy. So yes, that potential, and then if you go to 9 billion people, you could multiply out the cost savings, but also the improvement in care. Because when you know the better care, the physicians would love to have this information. This could be broadcast out, worldwide immediately. Here's how things are going. Here's what you should be doing in these situations. So yeah, that for me is the ultimate place to be in healthcare.
So we're coming up towards the end of our time, and I guess I just ask you to each give us your final reflections. I guess my own is, I'm always fascinated by what Napoleon did in Europe in the 1800s, right? He kind of civilized Europe by putting in a land registry, putting in addresses, carrying out a census, giving everybody last name. But, all of those are essential mapping functions of the state. And one of the things I find fascinating is the companies are now coming up with data products that allow markets to manage what states used to have to do by fiat. But location is still key.
Yeah. Just I guess my summary would be, our company and the company we acquired has been in GIS for a long, long time. I'm not sure that we ever had as much business growth in the 10+ years we've been in the space is in the last quarter, and so what that tells me is if we have as an industry are applying our core competencies in geospatial capabilities and location intelligence to the right business applications or business use cases today, and then also adopting the core competencies of GIS to the modern technologies of today, whether it's API management, SaaS, big data, mobile, data and analytics, I think that the industry has a really bright future if we do those two things.
So I'll go so that one of you in the middle can go last for a change. I think the thing what you mentioned there really impressive. If you think about all 4 companies that are up here, and you think about what those 4 companies represented 10 years ago or 15 years ago, it's completely different, right? And I think fundamentally this is what's happening. The technology, the rate of technology change that we all thought was going to slow down hasn't, right? The rate of technological change keeps going, and it doesn't appear to have any reason to stop. And I think the successful companies and the successful countries and the successful policies are those that embrace that change as soon as possible. We're in kind of a world where change is going to continue. We'd like to think that it's kind of static at some level, but it's really not. The technology change is coming. It's coming just as fast, if not faster, than it used to, and we all just have to be prepared to change.
Okay, I'll simply endorse everything that I thought was very well said. I won't try to say it as well, and say, yeah, because you heard me talk about the different data models, the different substrates. So knowing the changes there and what we're providing and they're providing, what they're providing, my only specific advice to you is you're going to start trying some new project, a new area. Find out what's already available from among us before starting from scratch, because as things are changing this fast, what we offer is changing that fast. What Intel offers is changing that fast. And that's all across the board. So see what's there, and then do your special things for your special case on top of that. Thank you.
We live in an amazing world, and I'm a technologist by trade, and there's nothing that we would be able to do at Thomson Reuters in terms of building out these amazing software solutions without guys like Intel and Oracle creating the technology that's out there. Given that, you know, technology, as they say, is moving at a ridiculous pace, I'd also say that the ability to build amazing software and exploit big data is where it's going to be. Finding signals amongst the noise, finding the thing that's going to trigger the change that enables us to cure cancer or to solve the sorts of problems that we have. The information's out there. We've just got to do a hell of a good job of going and mining and finding those answers. Thank you.
Please provide a round of applause for our speakers. And thank you for your question.